Magic Tree House, Book number 54, A Merlin Mission, Balto of the Blue Dawn, by Mary Pope Osborne. Chapter 1, Gold Dust, Stardust. Jack was reading on the front porch when Annie peeked out the door. "Bike ride later?" she asked. "Sure," said Jack. "Let's go now before it gets too dark. Tell Mom and Dad." Annie slipped into the house to tell their parents. Jack closed his book about whales and sharks and stood up and stretched. He was tired from swimming at the lake all afternoon, but he felt good. He loved summer. A bike ride in the warm evening air seemed like the perfect way to end the day. "Good to go," said Annie, coming out of the house with their bike helmets. Jack and Annie ran down the porch steps and climbed on their bikes. They put on their helmets and pedaled out the street. As they rode up their block, they waved to a neighbor mowing her lawn and to a couple walking two poodles. "We need a dog," Annie called back to Jack. "What kind do you want?" he said. "Any kind. I like all dogs," said Annie. "Big or small?" said Jack. "Well, both. I want a little dog and a big dog," she said. "And maybe an in-between dog, too." Jack laughed. "Yeah, I'd like a dog," he said, "but probably just one." "Whoa," said Annie, putting on her brakes. "Did you see that?" "What?" said Jack, stopping beside her. "Above the woods, a bright flash of light," she said. "You're kidding," he said. "Not kidding. I had a feeling even before we left the house," said Annie. Without another word, she bumped her bicycle over the sidewalk curb and headed into the Frog Creek woods. Jack followed, his bike bouncing over roots and twigs in the shadows beneath the trees. Growing darker by the second, the woods were filled with the sounds of crickets. "Am I brilliant or what?" cried Annie. She had stopped next to the tallest oak. "Brilliant," said Jack, laughing. The magic tea house was perched high in the oak. Their friend Teddy was grinning at them from the window. "It's about time," he called. "I was getting ready to summon a crow or a rabbit to go get you." Jack and Danny leaned their bikes against the tree and hurried up the rope ladder. Inside the tea house, Teddy greeted them with hugs. "We must hurry," he said. "You are needed right away." "Where? When? Why?" said Annie. "Where? A seaside town in a vast territory below the Arctic," said Teddy. "When? February 1925. And why? Because Merlin and Morgan believe you can save lives there." "Whoa," said Jack. "Sounds serious," said Annie. "And cold," said Jack. "It is quite serious, and it will be quite cold," said Teddy. "First, you'll need this." He handed Annie a small travel guide. "The territory of Alaska." "Alaska? Oh boy, I've always wanted to visit Alaska," she said. "This guide was published in 1925, said Teddy. "So it will be a different Alaska than Alaska today," said Jack. "Precisely," said Teddy. "And you'll need this." He reached into his cloak and took out a small gold box. He handed it to Jack. "What's this for?" said Jack. He started to take off the lid. "No, don't open it now," said Teddy. "There is a thimble full of enchanted gold dust inside. It is from Morgan. You can use it only once." "Use it for what?" asked Jack. In your time of need, you can use it to acquire a great skill that you both will share, said Teddy. Cool, said Annie. Like the time we used the magic mist of Avalon to give us the skill of great rock climbers. And the time we wished to be great magicians, said Jack, and great horse chainers, and great soccer players, said Annie. Yes, a bit like all those times, said Teddy. If you remember, on those missions, the magic lasted only for an hour. This time, the magic will last for 12 hours. Wow, that's a lot, said Annie. Yeah, said Jack, smiling. That's a really long time to be great at something. But there is another difference, said Teddy. Your skills on those past missions helped you solve your own problems. On this adventure, your great skill can only be used to save the lives of others. So what kind of danger will others in Alaska be facing? Said Jack. Marlin and Morgan didn't tell me that part, said Teddy. I imagine they were quite sure you'd be able to figure it out when you arrived in the Alaskan territory. We'll try, said Jack. One more thing, said Teddy. Merlin wants those you help on this mission to be celebrated as heroes. He does not wish his magic to be part of their story. Okay, but how do we help without anyone knowing that we're helping? Said Annie. Teddy reached into his cloak and brought out a second tiny box. This one was made of shimmering dark blue stone. He handed it to Annie. She cradled the box in her hands. It's so beautiful, she breathed. Do not open it until you need what's inside, said Teddy. It holds a bit of stardust, very rare and very precious. Oh, what's it for? Whispered Annie. If you toss the stardust into the air and make a wish to be forgotten, said Teddy, any memory or evidence of your visit will instantly be erased. Oh, said Jack. Okay. Put the magic away now, said Teddy. You must be on your way. Jack hadn't brought his backpack, so he put the gold box in the pocket of his jeans. Annie did the same with the dark blue box. Ready, they said together. Be safe, be well, said Teddy, and do not freeze to death. Gee, thanks, Jack said. Good advice. Annie pointed at the cover of the travel guide. I wish we could go to the Alaskan territory, she said. The wind started to blow. The treehouse started to spin. It spun faster and faster. Then everything was still. Absolutely still. Chapter 2. Quarantine. Cold face, Annie said, her teeth chattering. Yeah, said Jack. His breath billowed white into the sharp air. I feel like a fat brown bear, said Annie. Jack laughed. He and Annie were covered with fur from head to toe. They wore fur pants, fur mittens, knee-high fur boots, and long fur jackets with fur hoods. Welcome to Alaska, said Jack. He pulled up his hood and tied it tightly under his chin. Annie did the same. Then they looked out the window together. The treehouse had landed in one of a few trees at the edge of a snowy field. Beyond the field was a coastal town. The winter sun was setting over an ice-covered sea. I wonder why we're needed to save lives here, said Jack. Do you think something scary is about to happen? Said Annie. Scary, said Jack. Like an earthquake or a volcano? Said Annie. I don't know, Jack said. He picked up their guide to the Alaskan territory. He pulled off one of his fur mittens, opened the book, and read, "About 12,000 years ago, people and their dogs crossed a land bridge over the Bering Sea from Russia into Alaska. When they reached Alaska, they became the first humans and dogs to live in North America." "Cool," said Annie. "I like the dog part." Jack kept reading. "Until Russian explorers came to Alaska a few hundred years ago, only native Alaskan people lived there. For thousands of years, the native people survived by making use of the few resources of their rugged, ice-bound land." "Wow, they must be tough people," said Annie. "No kidding," said Jack. He read more. "In the late 1800s, the United States purchased Alaska from Russia, and it became a territory of the U.S. "That's why this guide is called the Territory of Alaska," said Jack. "It's from 1925. That's before Alaska became a state." "Got it," said Annie. "Okay, let's go find some lives to save." "Wait," said Jack. "Where's our magic?" "Check your pockets," said Annie. Annie pulled off her mittens, and they both reached into the big side pockets of their parkas. "Got it," said Jack as he pulled out the tiny gold box. "Me too," said Annie. She held up the tiny stone box. "Gold dust, stardust," said Annie. "One to save lives, one to make everyone forget that we saved lives." "Yep," said Jack. "Let's not lose them." They tucked the boxes back into their pockets and put their mittens on. As Annie started down the tea house ladder, Jack crammed the Alaska guide into another one of his pockets. Then he clumsily followed Annie down the rope ladder in his bulky clothes. As they started across the snow-covered field, their boots squeaked in the snow. Jack's throat hurt from breathing the dry, cold air. In the fading winter light, they crossed a bridge and walked along a frozen creek until they came to a boardwalk that ran along the ice-bound seashore. A sign said "Front Street." The town was empty. There were no old cars or wagons, only piles of ice and snow. As Jack and Annie champed through the snow, they passed stores and saloons and restaurants with crooked signs and broken windows. They all looked abandoned. There were only a few shops that looked as if they were closed but still might be in business. Gnome Pharmacy, Gnome Laundry, and Gnome Bakery. "I guess we're the gnome," said Annie. "Good guess," said Jack. He took off one of his mittens, pulled out their Alaska guide, and found Nome. He read, "Around 1900, gold was discovered in Nome, a remote Alaskan town on the Bering Sea. More than 30,000 gold seekers rushed to the boom town. But within 10 years, Nome's gold rush was over, and the town fell on hard times." "Hard times? No kidding," said Annie. "Nome looks more like a ghost town than a boom town." "Let's keep going," said Jack. He put his mitten back on and put their guide in his pocket. As he and Annie kept walking down the snow-covered boardwalk, they passed the Dream Movie Theater and the Golden Gate Hotel. Both had signs that said, "Temporarily closed." Finally, they came to a white 2-story wooden building that looked like someone's house. They could see lights and people inside. The black sign above the front door said, "Maynard Columbus Hospital." "At least there are a few people in town," said Annie. But why is the hospital the only place that seems open? Said Jack. Yeah, weird, said Annie. They walked down the boardwalk until they came to a schoolhouse with a sign that said, No school, quarantine. Uh-oh, said Jack. Quarantine? Asked Annie. It means you're supposed to stay home so you won't spread a bad disease that's going around, said Jack. Maybe that's why everything is closed, said Annie. I wondered what the disease is. I don't know, said Jack. But if we go back to the hospital, we can ask someone there. In the twilight, Jack and Annie hurried up the boardwalk to the entrance of the small hospital. When they stepped through the front door, they found a cold waiting room filled with people bundled in fur parkas and boots. Some seemed quite ill, slumped down in their chairs with their eyes closed. Others looked disappointed when they saw Jack and Annie, as if they were waiting for someone else. Only one person stepped forward to greet them. A boy about 14 or 15 years old stared at them with dark, questioning eyes. Who are you? He asked. Our names are Jack and Annie, said Annie. Are you sick with diphtheria? The boy said. Annie shook her head. No, we just arrived from the United States. Excuse me a second. She turned away from the boy and whispered to Jack. What's diphtheria exactly? It's a dangerous disease from the past. That must be what the quarantine is for, Jack whispered. We can't catch it. We had vaccines. Annie turned back to the boy. Do you have diphtheria? She asked gently. No, my sister and my mother do, he said. They are very sick in beds upstairs. I'm waiting for the special medicine to arrive. Dr. Welch says it will save their lives. Before the boy could say more, Jack heard a man shouting in a room down the hall. Hello, hello, can you hear me? The boy left the waiting room and hurried to an open doorway. Jack and Annie followed, and the three of them peeked into a doctor's office. Two people were anxiously watching a man talk on an old-fashioned black telephone. Yes, this is Mayor Maynard in Nome, the man shouted into the receiver. Has the musher arrived with the medicine package yet? As Mayor Maynard listened to the person on the other end of the line, Annie whispered to Jack, A musher is a person who drives a sled pulled by a team of dogs. I know, said Jack. That's a cool job, Annie whispered. No, listen to me, Mayor Maynard yelled into the phone. If Gunnar Kaysen arrives at the roadhouse in Solomon, keep him there. Do not let him and his team move on. We can't risk losing the medicine. We're expecting a huge blizzard tonight, sweeping down from the Arctic. A huge blizzard sweeping down from the Arctic? That's not good news, thought Jack. We cannot lose that medicine, said the mayor. 5 have died already. There are at least 20 more cases, possibly 50. The Board of Health believes it is better to delay it than to risk losing it altogether. Tell Kaysen to wait until further word. No, you can't delay it, the boy said, barging into the office. Gunnar Kaysen must keep going. The medicine has to get here soon. I don't have a choice, Oki, said the mayor, hanging up the phone. It's what the Board of Health has ordered. The boy turned to a large, rosy-cheeked woman. Nurse Morgan, please don't let them delay, he said. He sounded near tears. It's going to be all right, Oki, Nurse Morgan said, patting him on his shoulder. Please go back to the waiting room. Don't worry, said a gray-haired man in a white coat. I promise you, everyone is working night and day to fight this epidemic. Dr. Welch, my sister and mother need the medicine now, or they will die, said Oki. Even in a blizzard, I know Gunnar Kaysen can keep running. You must leave us to do our work, said Dr. Wilt. He gently took the boy by the arm and led him back into the hall where Jack and Danny were waiting. Everything will be fine. Try to get some rest, son. We don't want you to get sick too. Then Dr. Wilt stepped into the room with Mayor Maynard and Nurse Morgan and closed the door.